Crispy Chrissy. Crispy Chrissy says, what was the most memorable interaction you had with one of the neighbors of M5 during the production of MythBusters? So we had a lot of different neighbors over the years. We had a lot of different wonderful neighbors. We had an embroidery neighbor, we had a HVAC neighbor, but then also at M6 we had a neighbor, and at M7 we had neighbors. I'll start with the M7 neighbors. The M7 neighbors were in an industrial cul-de-sac sort of thing. And MythBusters M7 was right next door to a salami maker, who I think their last name was actually Salami. Very appropriate. A family business, clearly, who we bought the salami from to make salami rockets back when we did Confederate rocket and salami rockets. That was totally entertaining to like just walk over there and be like, can we get some salami? And they're like, yeah. That was delightful. M6 had, I think, the most difficult neighbor interaction. So at M6, which was season 2 of MythBusters, is the only season M6 existed. And I built that shop out. M6 was where we tested car engine myths. And one of the engine myths was you put sugar in a gas tank and it will make the engine seize. And so we had a V6, I think, engine out of a car, but ready to run. We had it on a stand, we put sugar in its gas tank, and then we ran this unmuffled, I think it was a 6-cylinder engine, could have been a 4, doesn't matter. We ran it unmuffled for hours. For hours. And the experiment was awesome and hilarious because it was such a grind for us. It was an awful sound. We're all wearing hearing protection. It's really like just one of those things that's both awful and you know it's making great TV. Like, this is fabulous. What we didn't know was that next door was a portrait photographer studio. And they were so angry. We made an entire day. They wrote us and said that we made their entire space uninhabitable by them for the entirety of the 2 days we were testing that. Yeah, they were very, very upset. And then, oh, right. Yep. Let's see. The motor at M6. Yep. No, I'm going to conflate. I'm going to add another question to this from D. Friendly, who wanted to know, you've said many times that a shop is a living entity that needs to be able to evolve to fit the current needs of the shop. I'm curious how much Jamie had to change things about M5 to accommodate a show like MythBusters. Okay. I agree with you, and I have said that a shop is a living entity that needs to be able to evolve to fit the current needs of the shop. I'm not sure I feel quite so dictatorial about it. I think at its best, a shop does evolve to adjust to fit the current needs of the shop, but it doesn't always. You've got to have a team and a shop proprietor that are awake to that, because you can get into some real calcified behaviors. But your question was how much Jamie had to change about M5 to accommodate a show like MythBusters. Having the show MythBusters film in Jamie's space was both awesome and awful. I'm speaking on Jamie's behalf here, and I don't think he would disagree. The awesome, having a TV show, 14 years, filming in a space you felt totally familiar in, getting paid rent for that space. All of that was just great professionally. Your biggest expense as a small business in a 5,000 square foot building is how you're going to make that payment. And having a regular gig for so long that took care of a lot of expenses, that was fabulous. Having a whole bunch of people, often new people every year in different positions, showing up to work in the space that you have built, absolutely horrendous. Penn Jillette had a funny thing he said once, is if you have friends who are filmmakers and they ask to make a film in your house, they are not your friends. There's nothing worse you could do to a house than make a movie in it. And if for all of the watchers who went to film school, you're all nodding, you know exactly how much abuse a film crew can bring to a space. And Jamie is no spring flower. He understood the vicissitudes of production. He always understood how production needed to go. But the practical result for him was that things were constantly moving into places he didn't know where they were. And thus keeping his shop useful for him was a never-ending battle of things disappearing from where he thought they were, moving to where someone else thought they might go. And, if you don't know where your stuff is, it's not your stuff. If you don't know where it is, you can't use it for a solution. It doesn't exist. That's why I don't like deep shelves. You put something behind a thing on a shelf, it's gone. Jamie had to deal with this on a professional level. People taking up the parking, dirtying up the bathrooms, all that kind of stuff. And I just really want to acknowledge that it was awful. Like, one of the great luxuries I have in this space is that I am, to the largest degree, the only person that uses it. So anything that's missing is on me. And that is a terrific relief. Running a shop with a bunch of other people, stuff gets broken, you don't know about it, stuff gets misplaced, you don't know about it. It's hard to keep that stuff running. It's hard to keep that consciousness going. So Jamie had to do a lot to accommodate the production. He had to carve out spaces that production could just have total control over. He had to also push back a lot and say, you guys can't do it this way. You have to do it this way. You got to listen to me. You got to pay attention. It's completely understandable. But I think if you ask Jamie this question, he'd get this kind of like little smile in the corner of his mouth as he thought about just how rough it was and how much he got pissed off about it on the regular. Yeah, takes over your space. I could totally... Listen, I'll give you my personal example, which was when I made Savage Builds. We rented a warehouse to film that in, and because of all my tools here are on wheels, we wheeled everything out of here over there. I got to experience a little bit of what this was like for Jamie. So first of all, my tools move over to another space where it takes me a week to figure out where everything is. Second of all, I come here on the weekends and there were no tools. So for the 5 months I was making Savage Builds, I lost my ability to soothe in this space because there was no useful toolage in here. That was what was one of the dumber things I have done professionally. I did not think through the cost of moving all my tools somewhere else. And that wore on my soul. I don't think I'm exaggerating that. It wore on my soul to not have the shop extant as it was. Yeah, sure, I could have gone over to Hunter's Point to the production shop and used that, but that's very different when you live a block and a half from your workspace. So I'm just going to say, yeah, it was hard on Jamie, and he was not happy about it frequently over the years that we were making the show. As much as he acknowledged what a bonus it was, there were also difficulties, and I just want to acknowledge that. Oh, Gideon Show Up. Have you ever had to work out of your vehicle on jobs? What is the best way to stay organized on jobs that you can't complete in your shop? Dude, bivouacking out of the shop is a nightmare. And it's a crucial skill to have. Yeah, so you're gonna bivouac outside your shop. It happens all the time professionally as a maker. You're gonna have to think portably. You're gonna have to think through, I personally, when I am thinking about executing anything in the field, I make lists, it's lots of list making. I make lots of lists. Of things that I ideally want in the field. I also make lists in my head of all the worst case scenarios that could happen. What happens if my luggage gets lost? What happens if it rains? What happens if a bird poops on our main rig? What happens if it doesn't rain? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think through all these contingencies and what I would want to have and frankly, the place you're gonna fail when you're thinking about bivouacking outside your shop is not the I need a Sawzall. It'll be that you forget the battery for the Sawzall. So if you're bringing cordless tools, you got to make lists that you check of the cordless batteries, but also the chargers, etc. You got to really think through the stuff that, and it's particularly pernicious, little alliteration, because the things you're going to forget to bring into the field are the things you need the most, because you don't realize that they're just sitting there in your shop. You can pull out a blow dryer and dry something right away. that might be the thing that has a low consciousness in your head about where it is in the shop. And thus, when you're thinking about going out in the field, you're not thinking about you'll need some hot, dry air, and you forget to bring that thing. And all of a sudden, you've got to wait in the damp conditions while something dries. So you got to really work through each thing that you've built, what it will take to repair under all the different circumstances. And I have worked on shoots in which, God, I worked on a Pizza Hut shoot where we made a remote control one-of-one pizza delivery vehicle that was this big. And just before we filmed it, somebody drove over it. This one-of-one prop that we had spent in Jamie's shop 2-3 weeks sanding, making, sculpting, painting, finishing, making perfect service. And a production vehicle drove over half of this car, and it was filmable within 15 or 20 minutes. And I believe the credit for that goes to my friend Hunter McCann and Jonathan Searles. They did an unbelievable amount of work in a crazy short period of time. And they had everything they needed because they were professionals and they knew how to leave the house with everything that you might need to completely rebuild this thing for a shoot. Yeah, bivouacking is non-trivial, man. Let's see here. Working out of your vehicle on jobs. It's important to stay really, really organized. I try and have everything in cases when I leave to a shoot with my car. I want everything in a case so that I can lay all the cases out and put them all back in. I don't want a lot of loose stuff bouncing around. That's how I lose stuff. The better organized your cases are, the less you're going to lose stuff in the field. This is the thing is, when you go out into the field, one of the key things you're going to want to travel with is folding tables. No one's going to have enough folding tables for you. You're going to bring your own. Bring big ones, bring small ones, bring an easy up for shade. You have to deliver all your own comfort on site. Folding tables are going to be a godsend because you can open all your cases and look at them. And then as you're packing up, you could do the same. If you're trying to do that on the ground next to a car at a windy beach, just a nightmare. I wouldn't wish on anybody. And then bring enough water. I visited a YouTuber's set a few years ago who asked me to come on their video, and we had a wonderful time collaborating. But I also stepped onto a set full of people that had clearly almost never worked outside a production studio. And here we were in this hot set, and there was barely any water around. And that's just institutional knowledge. The first time MythBusters went to the desert, we didn't know you had to bring your own shade. And Eric Gates, the Gates brothers, who were the late Eric Gates was our rocketeer and our rocket specialist on that. And they brought 5 easy ups for 5 guys because they knew what their deal was. All of these things I learned the hard way. All rules, all institutional knowledge, as it were, is written in blood. And I think that's a reasonable place to wrap it out. I would love to know, institutional knowledge. What bits of institutional knowledge do you have that are written in your blood that you've never forgotten and really enjoy passing on to other younger makers, creators, point of viewers? I'd love to know that in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I wanted to briefly mention that you could become a tested member. I know everybody is competing for you to become a member of their thing. What I want to express to you is that the Tested membership has become such an important part of the Tested family. We get tremendous feedback from the Tested members, and they expand the stories that we can tell and the things that we have access to. And you can become a part of it right now by clicking on the link below. See you in the chat.